Alright, the UC passenger car brake equipment with a quick service feature with instruction pamphlet number 5054 with the May 1936 with the copyright Westinghouse Air Brake Company. Alright, type the UC passenger brake equipment, the quick service feature for the parts equipment, the description of the parts, the U12BD, the universal valve, brake cylinder, the reservoir, automatic select adjusted pressure rotating valve with a bypass choke with the potential for the figural dirt collector conductors valve, pipe fixtures, operating equipment, installation, maintenance, and lubrication, general hints, modified equipped cars, view of the passenger and freight service, and list with illustrations. So, how to study the air brakes. Because of the air brake mean with the train with control throughout the understanding of the elementary function of the principle of the operation part of the railroad men have anything to do with the train handling, either directly or indirectly, is not only the most important information that, to be required, but absolutely essential for the largest factor of safety, economy of the damage of the handling of the freight and passenger traffic with a minimum loss of life of the damage of railroad rolling stock and landing. A greater deal of the misapprehension and confusion might exist, however, the regard for the kind of practical air brake information most essential for the differential classes of the railroad employees. Practical operating mechanical railroad officials in recent years have approved the functional fundamental of the base of the approach of the subject air brake education as known meeting of the actual operation conditions serve the requirements. Engine man, fireman, conductors, brakeman, train crew generally with the actual charge of the trains on the road. For this class of the employee, with the first essential ability with the skillful manipulate the brake system as a whole, which involve the general knowledge of the function features that are obtainable for the given system to make it the primary drain test before starting out and how to operate the brake valve to be sure of the best result. Take control under different conditions that exist for the beginning of the given road of the secondary relative to the mind with the importance of operating an employee with the class should know for the internal working of the various individual devices which make up the brake system and be familiar with the movement of the parts detail and intrinsities various air pressure for the different chamber of the ports and passengers, etc. Of course, the more comprehensive the brake education they employ, the more valuable the service of the inside road. But for the engine man, for example, the ability to manipulate the brake valve with the skill, with the judgment, and the primary importance is always the class on information covered in publication 9037. The passenger train handling instruction will be gladly furnished upon application. Air brake foreman, repairman, test, rack operator. The class employees who have them primarily internal construction for the operating proper the function of the move of the parts of the individual air brake devices, stay ports, passages, chamber, the air pressure for the why and there for internal operation. First important knowledge manipulation. Secondary, although desirable, of course, to be encountered for us at the time. Opportunity permit the matter covering description, etc. begins after page 3053, therefore intending primary for the class of railroad employees. Air brake instructor is inspector of the road foreman, engineer, engines, train master officials in charge of the air brake operation instruction, general. Class of the railroad officials employee must be understand the function features available in each type of locomotive with passenger freight car brake of the equipment. It should be familiar with the general recommendation of the manipulate and then with specific instruction thereon formulated official approved for the given road, include throughout the understanding of the condition producing brake into with the slid flat wheels except for the cotton shocks and stress, train handling, and or damage to rolling stock landing will show know that the internal operation and function of individual devices maintain apparatus, serve the tearing test, the brake efficiency test of individual devices and repair shop, and general approved methods of the organization instruct for the different classes of the railroad employees in order to secure the largest possible practical result of the railroad. Are the instruction plan will therefore made with the sufficient comprehensive throughout the normal the requirements of the class official will be, feel very strongly that the most concerned that no effort of the greater practical benefit of the road server than that of the spent in the proper kind of the air brake education we already ready and willing at all times to assist with the promoting with the process of the education along with the practical lines in every way possible. Private the instruction pamphlet signal copies 50 cents. Alright, show the, we're going to flip the page real quick, and then we'll show you shows the view of the U12BD universal showing pipe connections, emergency valve, check valve, protection valve, quick action valve, servicing reservoir, charging valve, lease piston cover the equalizing cylinder cap, and we're going to flip that back the other way. Alright, the UC passenger brake equipment with the quick service feature. The passenger train operation condition become with several different has become so different and severe during the years that demand with the most efficient and effective of the brake here too thereof and being available. Rapid development and motor power of the rolling stock has imposed with the stringent requirements as only going to be the best to meet the train control. Many chains have taken place with the train chief among with the being in the heavy car with the longer car trains with the high speed with the faster schedule with the alternating with the render with the air to therefore standard brake equipment are less satisfactory and efficient. Heavier cars necessitated development with a higher braking force involved with the larger cylinders with the accompanying with the larger reservoirs which are actuated with the difficulties hereto vital in brake operation. Inevitable loss will tend to reduce overall brake efficiency as much more serious factors than formerly. Large cylinders intensify with the harmful effects of the fouls travel to become with a greater piston with the displacement, the increase of the possibility of the piston backing leakage, heavy foundation brake rigging, and may be necessary with the high forces developed to absorb more cylinder effort with the work imposed upon the brake shoe with the greatest because of the higher unit of the combined with speed lengthened to length of the stop, which means the lowering of the coefficient friction consequently reduce the average retarding force. The larger the reservoir, so increase the volume of the charge of the brake pipe with the render of the less effective of the function with a quick recharge feature for the previous equipment is to conserve the brake pipe pressure with the consequently delayed and uncertain release of the rear train due to slow rise of the brake pipe pressure. Longer trains involve with a greater number of the brake equipment and series always aggravated with the trouble of regarding uncertain release as well as intensify with effective serial brake application. Higher speeds have greatly increased the energy of the dissipate with the bringing of the train to stop as well as the made with the time element with giving the brake and comply with a much more manifest sense. Every second delay has proportionally greater effect with the length of the stop. Faster schedules have reduced the margin of safety train operation created with the demand with a greater reserve braking force. In addition to these general conservations, there are certain inherent characteristics useful type of the brake equipment that have rendered inadequate with the modern conditions, such as lack of serviceability and that with the inevitable fluctuation of brake pipe pressure often cover the brake to creep on, that it must be possible to make such a light reduction as to render release uncertain due to the inability to build sufficient differential graduated release, quick recharge, and high emergency pressure features of this combined that in the former eliminated by cutting out the supplementary reservoir of the others are lost. The possibility of the desired quick action of the abnormal slide valve of the friction, inability to obtain emergency application with a heavy service application with a very desirable, often necessary of the Jason. Is to be averted back. Recognize the consideration safety of the comfort of the passenger, of the economy of the time of the modern service, of the transfer, traffic requirements, demand of the brake, greater capacity of effectiveness there too, the available the Westing Air Brake Company developed universal pneumatic brake equipment schedule, the UC, as so-called with the maybe to the universal application to all classes and conditions of the passenger train service. The new and improved functional character of the universal valve of the main to adequately control the modern passenger train possible are as follows. Certainty and uniformity service action. The feed groove of the club with the slightest brake pipe of the production movement of the piston only become required to design such that they require with the necessary proper differential to be built with the move of the parts of the service position to the reduction as continued. This means that all brakes will apply alike. 2. Maximum serviceability of the release of the sensitive the portion of the cavities equalizing graduating valve of the slide and slide valve seat are arranged so that they provide maximum permissible resistance before application of the minimum possible resistance before relief of the demand of the arrangement are twofold. A. It prevents the brakes from the creeping of one inevitable fluctuation of the brake pipe pressure and the engine man for making such light reductions have the render either release difficult, and B. Ensure the valve will respond with the increase of the brake pipe pressure make a release more certain. Alright, we'll flip the page again. Show for the UV12BD universal valve showing various details. Safety valve, cutoff valve, safety valve, intercepting valve, strainer, quick action charging, check valve, quick service port, check valve, direct graduated release cap, blinking flange, emergency slide valve exhaust. Alright, 3. The quick service feature for the effect of the brake application provided with the feature for the operator with the produce very nearly simultaneous with the brake application on all cars of the train result with more nearly with the uniform retardation practically eliminates slag action. 4. Improved quick recharge with the graduated relief feature for the auxiliary reservoir volume consisting of the 2 units with a small auxiliary reservoir and fixed effect except of the 2-cylinder insulation hereby and explained with the triple reservoir size of the proportional of the brake cylinder. When the graduated release is cut by the means of the adjusting of the cap of the purpose of the auxiliary reservoir is recharge of the emergency reservoir to the width within a few pounds of the normal brake pipe pressure during the time and practically no air is being drawn from the brake pipe. When graduated the release cuts out of the air auxiliary reservoir only recharge of the brake of the pipe of the surface reservoir was recharged from the emergency reservoir and it will be evident that The gradual release is more powerful, flexible with the emergency reservoir, increase the pressure for the small with the auxiliary reservoir, effective with the graduation. Quick recharge of the surface of the reservoir directly with the only auxiliary reservoir being charged with the brake pipe, conserve the brake pipe pressure, makes it possible to be prompt with the application of the short intervals. And C, the brake pipe is conserved during a release since the amount required to effect the release of the brakes is reduced to minimum. And D, rapid increase of the brake pressure is effectively increased, ensuring with a more certain relief that all brakes throughout the train. 5. Maximum practical difference between the surface and emergency braking for. The brake cylinder pressure during the surface is applicated for the limited means the safety valve of the pressure emergency application build up. Maximum attainable with a high pressure available to the system in the two-stage equalization surface emergency reservoir and within the brake cylinder. Thus, the high reserve braking force is always available for emergency stop. 6. The maximum brake cylinder pressure of the emergency obtained with the shortest possible time. When the parts move properly with the passage between the reservoir and the brake cylinder indirect and restricted, thus the brake pipe is promptly effective up to the maximum capacity. 7. The surface emergency function control for the independent portions of the valve. This means with the necessary flexibility with the response with the surface action of the valve is obtained without thereby making emergency parts more likely to operate with not desired. In other words, undesired quick action can originate from any of the action surfaces parts of the device with the possibility of the other cause is negligible. B. The full emergency brake valve force of the tank at any time of the respectively serve the application previously made, since the quick action emergency portions can always actuate an emergency rate with a reduction no matter how created. A protection against the deflection of the air system at a dangerously low point, with emergency action produced for the brake pipe pressure produced for the predetermined danger point, as well as the emergency rate reduction. The groove of the pressure for the system cannot be reduced. Through leakage and careless manipulation over the cover of the struts of the valve, the effectiveness of this brake will be seriously impaired. Alright, now, 9. Fault facility adapting equipment to any of the set of the surface condition. The reason for the unit set for the construction universal valve, which permits the accommodation of the operating part necessary to produce the desired result, should be further stated that all the functions of the mention that have been so combined with the requirements for the interchangeability with existing requirements are fully satisfied. Alright, parts of the equipment. The following list of the parts are made with the equipment with a short description of each. The universal valve type U12BD with a corresponding with a general way with a triple valve previously with a common U with the operator with the control of the emission of the air through the exhaust of the brake cylinder to recharge of the reservoir. A brake cylinder with a piston and a rod with a connected to the brake lever of the rod with the brake shoe with the when the force is forced outward by air pressure. The force is transmitted through the rod lever of the brake shoe with the apply for them to the wheel. 3. Supply with the storage reservoir. Designated auxiliary surface emergency reservoir with auxiliary and surface reservoirs combined with the reservoir volume and the brake cylinder surface application. All 3 reservoir volume emergency application. Emergency reservoir also for the obtaining of the quick recharge of the graduated relief. The direct and graduated release cap of the universal valve is set for graduated release. 4. Conductor's valve placed within inside each of the car, meaning that the brakes must be applied with the conductor in case of the accident of the emergency. Central figure dirt collector connected to the branch pipe with the brake pipe with the universal valve with the nearly universal circumstance for the permit illustrated in figure 33 with the purpose of the preventing piping scaling cinders form particle of any kind when reaching the universal valve. 6. Brake pipe, brake branch pipe T, various cutout cocks, angle caps, coupling, dummy couplings, etc. Location used for the rapidly understood isometric view of the equipment in figure 33 with the description which will follow. 7. The automatic slack adjuster. Simple mechanism with the predetermined piston travel, consequently uniform cylinder pressure for the constant with the maintain with the complying with the brakes each ear. To do the full share of the work with the screw and the highest efficiency, reducing the danger of the flat wheels, which would likely be accompanied with a wide range of piston travel. This device establishes the running piston travel that is piston travel occurring with the brakes and applied with the cars of motion. So this time during which the brakes are performed with the work of the running travel is most important. 8. The pressure retaining valve is used with the roads have the grade surface of the valve with the connecting with the pipe and the brake cylinder with the exhaust connection with the universal valve with the when handle plate with the retaining position retard with the rave with the brake cylinder valve with the engine man who is recharging the auxiliary surface of the reservoir when brake cylinder pressure for that has been reduced with a certain predetermined amount with retained with the pressure on brake cylinder. If the retaining valve bypass choke is used to describe under the description of the part of the rain pressure blows down at a much slower rate. While graduated release quick recharge with the feature of the universal valve will enable the engine to perform manually a large degree of the function performed automatically by the pressure retaining valve is usually found that the heavy grade surface is usually retaining valve with the desired account with the additional safety economy of the air consumption thereby secured. Where a pressure retaining valve is required, it should be 10-pound type. Alright, let's flip this again. View 12BD, universal valve, show differential position, high pressure cap, strainer, filling piece, pipe bracket, equalizing portion, quick action portion. We'll flip the page back. Our description of the part of the figure 1 and 2 of the photographic views of the U12BD with the universal valve show the location, some of the differential part of the figure 3 for the photographic view with the portion separated each for the other show the relative of the function location. Figure 26 show the location of various exhaust ports. The valve consists of the following: port 3-phase pipe bracket with which are bolted for the quick action equalizing portion for the third phase of the being covered with the blanking flange of the bracket with the bolt of the underframe over the cover with the all pipe with the connections can be made permanently to this bracket. If done with the none need to be the distributed removal the replacement of any of the portion of the universal valve of the bracket contained with the two chamber, the quick action chamber, quick action closing chamber, equalizing portion, which controls either directly or indirectly through the medium or other portion of the universal valve, the desired and charging of the reservoir application for the brakes, wherein the service in emergency and the release of the brake, quick action portion, which include the various parts of the controlling the quick action high pressure functions, and then the 4 strainer filling piece for the interposed between the quick action portion of the high pressure cap of the vent with the passage for the dirt and the air supply with the quick action port with the different portion of the containment, which are as shown in figure 4, 5, and 6. Or the pipe bracket with the pipe bracket 225 contained with the quick action closing chamber, the supply pressure for the control of the emergency position, and the quick action exhaust for the emergency application for the quick action closing chamber to also supply with the pressure to keep the quick action exhaust open for a definite length of time. The strip of the choke plug 230 with the exhaust choke plug 231 are located equalizing portion face of the bracket. The purpose of the explained on page 65 and 69 tabulation below the side of the E for the various cylinders. Surface exhaust choke valve with the brakes and brake cylinders over the choke and the exhaust choke. Show the surface number size and piece. Quick surface choke plug is located with the quick surface face for the bracket. With the purpose of the choke was explained on the page number 63 size of the choke's recording. To the volume of the brake pad with the card tabulated. The quick surface port charges from the brake pipe volume goes 600 and 900 at one side of the choke, and then 900, 1200, 1200, 1500, over 1500, and then over 1500 is no choke with the cubic inch branch pipe with the aim with the give the car some of the lineal step feet with each of the pipe of the forming with the branch pipe, and its branches multiplied with the following cubic inch volumes and per lineal feet. Pipe size standing with an extra strong equalizing portion. Equalizing portion contained with the equalizing portion piston number 4, which move the equalizing graduating slide valve with the brake pipe pressure of the variable, the equalizing graduating valve 7, which controls the flow of the air, the auxiliary reservoir resistance increase with cavity T, figure 28 from the cavities through the equalizing slide valve with the 3 with the atmosphere from the end chamber to the release position 16 through equalizing valve 3 to the atmosphere. 3. The auxiliary reservoir from the auxiliary sliding valve with the brakes on from the auxiliary reservoir with the equalizing slide valve 3 with the release of the slide valve 19 with the atmosphere. Equalizing slide valve 3 with control of the flow of the air with the end of the chamber, the release of the position 8 and 16 from the equalizing graduating valve 7 with the atmosphere. For the equalizing reservoir, equalizing graduating valve 7 for the brake cylinder with the auxiliary reservoir through the equalizing graduating valve 7 release slide valve with the 19 atmosphere with the equalizing portion piston stops 44 spring 45 force the equalizing piston forward with slightly away from the cylinder gap gasket. Flowing surface application there has the graduating valve with the lap, the surface port, check valve with the 12 with the prevents the flowing with a high pressure air for the brake cylinder with the equalizing piston chamber. G figure 32 with auxiliary reservoir during the emergency application. If F the emergency reservoir charging check valve 12, which prevents the flowing with the air of the emergency reservoir with the brake pipe with the auxiliary equalizing piston chamber to C with the figure 26 during the surface emergency application. The surface reservoir check valve 12, which prevents the flow of the air for the auxiliary reservoir of the surface reservoir. The regulated release position, which holds the equalizing slide valve with the graduated release position, may be made with the graduated lever with the cap set with the required position. Charging valve 34 provided with the recharging surface reservoir with the drawing any of the air from the brake pipe until all brakes are started with the release position 16. The differential type that put it to the cover with the movement of the release slide valve 19. Okay, the release slide valve 19, which controls the flow of the air with the emergency reservoir around with the charging valve 34 for the surface reservoir with the floor only. For the emergency reservoir, the auxiliary reservoir only with the graduated release cap with the graduated release position. From the emergency reservoir on the back of the high pressure valve 123 with the back of the high pressure valve 123 through the emergency slide valve 78 with the atmosphere for the auxiliary reservoir through the graduating equalizing slide valve 73, 7 and 3 atmosphere for the 5 and 6 for the brake cylinder with the atmosphere. M. The direct graduated release cap 22 for the application piston cup with the control of the type of the release for the here and after explained with the word graduated and directed are cast to flange for the cap of the word relief for the cap of the body with a large letter G. And D. Are cast on the face cap of the coinciding with the words of the flange chamber, the position of the cap until the proper letter coincide with the air of the equalizing portion, piston flange word with the give of the proper register for the thus setting and always for the full view of the side of the cover of the figure 22 and 23 illustrate with the two setting. The equalizing cylinder cap is drained 51 where it's collected with a fine dust particle with the air with the previously removed the dirt collecting protecting equalizing piston slide valve. The charging bypass check valve 54, which opens the bypass with the array around the strainer and key of the ladder and becomes restricted. The application by the check valve 54, which ensure the normal valve operation and key for the strain with the restriction unseen with the bypass around with the strainer. 3. Quick action portion. Quick action portion contained with the quick action chamber check with the valve with the number 99 ball check with the charges of the light bracket with a prevent the flow quick action chamber with the quick action close the chamber air with the brake pipe during the surface application quick surface the port check valve 99 for the ball check valve next to the pipe bracket with the prevents the backflow with the back brake cylinder with the brake pipe whenever the cylinder pressure is higher than that with the brake pipe quick action chamber slide valve chamber. The emergency piston 76th move of the emergency graduating valve and the 80 with the surface rate with the brake reduction made with the slide valve 78 with the emergency rate with the reduction is created. The emergency graduating valve 80 with the ball check charging choke 120 control the flow of air from the quick action closing chamber atmosphere during the shift of the application of the brake pipe of the brake cylinder during the shift of the application quick service feature 3 the quick action closing chamber the quick action piston 88 during the emergency application from the brake pipe quick action closing chamber during the charging operation from the charging rate with the governed by the ball check with the choke 102 with the mean of the clearance between the ball and the walls of the cavity of the ball charging choke with the also show with the prevent graduating valve with the blowing off seat during recharging the emergency slide valve 78 which will control the flow of the air with the quick action chamber through the emergency graduating valve 80 to the atmosphere from the quick action closing chamber to the quick action piston 88. 3. From the back of the high pressure valve with the 123 with the release slide valve with the 19 to the atmosphere with the top of the high pressure valve with the 123 with the bottom of the cutoff valve with the 141 for the atmosphere with the brake cylinder with the quick action chamber emergency application. The quick action piston at 88 with the valve, 85 with the brake valve with the atmosphere during the emergency strainer filling piece of the strainer filling piece containing the flat cartridge with the air strainer with the 181 with the protective parts with the preventing passage with the fine dust particles, air pass with the quick action portion of the emergency piston top of the 185 with the 186 with the increase of the differential required to move the emergency piston 76 from the surface of the emergency application. The high pressure cap. The high pressure cap contained with the protection valve 111 with which prevented the brake pipe and atmosphere with the cut of the emergency application with the brake pipe pressure with the best volume with approximately 35 pounds. The intercepting valve 117 which during the emergency application with the cut of the surface of the reservoir with the equalizing brake cylinder then cut off the surface of the reservoir permitted the emergency reservoir air to equalize within the brake cylinder. The high pressure valve 123 separated for the emergency reservoir with the brake cylinder except for the emergency application for the safety valve 149 which limited the strip of the brake cylinder pressure for the cutoff valve 141 cuts off the safety valve with the 149 with the brake during brake emergency application. The emergency check valve 153 which prevents sudden emission of the air with the brake pipe to the emergency piston chamber but permits the restricted flow of the air chamber during the emergency application for the emergency piston chamber to charging choke 157 will restrict the flow of the brake pipe pressure to the face of the emergency piston avoiding the suddenly build up of the pressure of the chamber which might slam the piston into a release. Figure 7 shows the valve of the E7, the safety valve. The E7 safety valve. The E7 safety valve figure 7, unlike ordinarily with the type of the safety valve, because of a certain limit of the closing pressure can be regulated as well with the pressure as well with the valve. Valve will open. Moreover, the valve opens with a pop-out action permits for the air to escape the atmosphere quickly with the opening and closing of the valve seat with the properly firm with the closing. When the pressure cavity of the A under the bore is significant to overcome the pressure conserve with the tension of the spring A6 with the valve 4 with the ray with the C with the upward movement of the cove of the upper end of the port D with the valve with the bushing with the opens with the port C with the permitting air from the cavity A through the cabin chamber B and port C atmosphere. At pressures below 4 decrease the tension of the spring with the 6 force of the valve 4 with the downward with the restricting of the operating opening of the port 6 to atmosphere with the open upper end of the port D with the spring chamber the E with although the chamber E is open to the atmosphere all time with the connection ports out of the body sufficiently with a small restricted exhaust so the pressure builds up rapidly with the chamber E with the assist of the spring 6 in the forcing the valve 4 quick into its seat. Shows the safety valve with the maximum opening pressure for which can cave. The UC equipment is 63 pounds. Remove the cap nut 3. Screw down with the back off regulating nut 7 that is required, after which we replace with the cap nut minimum of the clothing pressure for safety valve within the equipment that referred to. The 60 pounds can be adjusted by changing the side of the port F when regulating number 8, nut 8 for the purpose after the adjusting of the screw down jam nut 9. Are your brake cylinder. Figure 8 illustrated the section of the exterior with the Q type of the brake cylinder with the piston with the solid push rod with the 3 with the tab with the left with the foundation brake with the rigging 12 with the leaf spring with the 4 with the piston relief with the piston with the air press with the exhaust with the opposite side with the cylinder with the packing cup with 9 with the rest with the against the cylinder wall prevents escape of the air pressure half of the piston with the pressure head 5 with the wheel 5 with the detachable left with the bracket 7 with the and left the otherwise specified. These can be easily removed as allowed with the application automatic slack adjust with the obviating necessity for the changing of the head. The handbrake rigging was designed to work with harmony with the air brake shift with the solid cross edge with the normally furnished within which cave of the brake cylinder with the release spring. Return of the brake rigging to the release position with the slide cross head with the required separate relief. The spring may be used if desired. Show the 2-type Q brake cylinder. Are the brake cylinder protective? The brake cylinder protective the recommended device for the developer, the protective of the cylinder wall with the piston for the package for the dirt for their exhaust, and ensuring with the normal with the function with the cylinder with the extent of the period without necessity. Frequent inspection for cleaning the protective of the cylindrical cloth the flange on the large end of the flanging bolting between the non-pressure head of the cylinder body with the piston end of the hood. Held between the two circular steel plate for the relief of the spring hole for the small end of the protector, again with the piston with the flange end with the held from the gap between the non-pressure head with the cylinder body with the hood with the clap with the stem of the application relief of the piston protector as waterproof to show the dirt and water entering with the non-pressure end of the cylinder isn't collected in the hood with the discharge through the street all drain to the bottom of the non-pressure head. Consequently, the dirt never comes into contact with the cylinder wall or the packaging with this, so there's no undue wear. Not only with the brake cylinder maintainment that is effective and efficient with the work condition, but also serve with the life of the prolonged without the frequent necessity inspection and cleaning, renewal, and packing. Care should be taken to avoid allowing with the piston the strike with a non-pressure head at the testing of the cylinder rod with the detach with the cylinder level else the protector may be damaged. Reservoir. Enamel reservoirs are now strongly recommended to count with the durability and protection again with the corrosion oxidation preserving. Greater factor of their safety does with the plain and enamel type of these reservoirs are enameled both inside and out in special processes. Each reservoir is provided with a drain cock for the purpose of the draining off any water which may collect as well with the bleeding air of the reservoir. Necessary following is a list of standard reservoirs used for the various side of the brake cylinder, side of the size and capacity, cylinders used for the required and auxiliary service in emergency. And then we're going to switch it over here real quick. I'm sorry I didn't do that for many of them. But here's show the adjuster cylinder with the ratchet nut with a 4 adjusting screw in 3 casing and the 5 dead cylinder lever. Flip that back around. Are the automatic slack adjust for the adjuster for the illustrator of the figure 10 and 11 the brake cylinder with the piston with the packing act with the valve with the control of the ignition relief of the brake cylinder with the pressure for the U and from with the pipe B with the figure 10 with the port with the A with the cylinder with the port with the being located with the piston pack with the uncover with the predetermined piston travel to C with when the port A is uncovered with the brake cylinder with the air flows through pipe B with the slack adjuster C with the cylinder 2 with the small piston 19 figure 11 and force out with the compressing spring 21 attached with the piston stem 23 with the pawl extend with the casing with the 24 which again with the ratchet wheel with the 27 with no mounted on with the casing of 24 with on the screw with the 4 with the figure 10 when the brake is relieved with the brake cylinder with the return with the normal position air pressure with the cylinder 2 with the escape of the atmosphere with the pipe B with the port A with the non-pressure head with the brake cylinder with the pormatic of the spring with the 21 with the small piston with the normal position and doing with the pawl with the turn the ratchet wheels up with the screw forward thereby with the draws the lever on 5 slightly with the direction slack adjust the cylinder thus shortening with the brake cylinder piston travel the forcing with the brake with the short shoe with the nearest to the wheel with the pawl with the drawn back with the normal position A lug with the lever side with the trike, the projection figure A figure 11, and on the cylinders, thus raising the outer end of the ball, disengaging the ratchet wheel, permitting the screw to be turned by hand when desired. To apply with the new shoe, turning the casing 1 with the left over the moving the lever 5 toward the position shown in figure 10 until the sufficient slack introduced and the brake rigging to bring the shoes closer to the wheel, shorter than the piston treble of the casing of number 1. When the piston treble less than 7 inches, more than 8 inches, slack adjuster should be adjusted until the piston treble is about 7.5 inches with 60 pounds. Brake cylinder pressure safely, valve blowing. And show the auto figure 5 of 11. Figure 11 show the automatic slack adjuster cylinder released and applied. With the screw mechanism in proportion to the brake shoe for the compensator with the rate above the 132 for the inch for the operator for the adjuster for thereby remove the danger for the unduly by taking off the false travel, which would result with the shoes buying with the wheel with the adjuster for the cost save allowed with the workout with the outer end of the adjusted by that became locked to release the loosening with the stop screw with the end of straighten up with the 1 and with the 1.5 turn with the root. Rotate the ratchet no more than 1/8 of the turn to the right with the free with the pawl with the turn to the left with the out with the required slack with the B stir. Stop with the screw, retighten the state with the connection from the brake cylinder to the avoid with the necessity of the braking support with the adjuster with a special crane cylinder head with the provide with a suitable lug has been designed with the purpose of now furnished with a passenger cylinder car cylinders and left the other style as specified. Figure 12 showed the U with the slack adjusted with the Type Q brake cylinder with the best result with the same with the U with the copper pipe with the brake cylinder with the adjust with the cylinder since the pipe is more flexible and does not corrode. It should always be firmly secured. Slack adjuster cylinder should be cleaned and lubricated. All other adjusting carefully and inspected to give necessary attention to each time of the brake cylinder is clean. Pressure retaining valve by bypass choke. And we're going to cut the tape there. That's halfway through the book. And we're at 30 minutes in.